Everyone. Welcome to Wednesday Love Notes with Unity of Ocala. I am Reverend Laurie on this beautiful, crisp October morning. I hope you're enjoying Florida at its best. I love the fall season. And often you've heard me talk about my gardening attempts. I am I say avid gardener. I'm not a successful gardener, although I've had successes. I don't have this big, great, beautiful garden that I've always seen in my head. I don't know if it's Florida or if it's me, but I've had the most success with container gardens, which is interesting because I can't stand to be contained. So I have found that some of my plants can't either. I remember I did a whole series of talks, a whole month in the springtime about life lessons I'm learning from the garden. And I learned that plants are a lot like people, a lot like personalities. For example, there's carrots, and they grow nice and straight and just beautiful pruned tops to them, and they don't mess with anybody. They grow in straight lines, and they're just best if you leave them alone and let them do their thing. Squash, on the other hand, has no respect for boundaries. It grows all over the place, intrudes everybody's personal space, and is just a mess. And about that time when I was doing the series at my previous church, I accidentally knocked into the Christ candle, which was lit, and almost knocked it over had it not been for my usher, Roy, on the front row, who grabbed it as it almost toppled off of the podium. And I looked out at my peers there in the congregation, and I said, as you can see, I am a squash. And about half the congregation raised their hands as they were sitting next to their carrots. But I've learned a lot of lessons in the garden. I've learned how to become still and watch the beauty of patience as nature takes a tiny seed and it blooms into incredible edible goodies. It just never ceases to amaze me. My ancient ancestors must have been croppers, must have been farmers. I know some of them were ranchers, but I'm sure there were some farmers in there. And I have fallen in love with container gardening because you can put your own soil in it and make it perfect for whatever you're growing. And it's great for root vegetables, which I have not had any luck with. I don't know if it's the soil, the heat, the bugs, combination of all of that. I can't control the watering, but container gardening, and they have the best type of containers that I have found. They're these great big, like 5-gallon cloth, almost like gunny sack tight weave. And they've got little pockets on the bottom where you can harvest potatoes and carrots and onions and radishes and beets and all kinds of things. And I've had really good luck with my white potatoes and red potatoes. I did great container gardening for tomatoes this year. I got some really beautiful, I don't like the great big beefsteaks because it was only 2 of us when I was growing tomatoes, and it would go bad. We'd have tomato sandwiches, but I like the little really juicy ones. And I got a lot of those. I did great with my red peppers until a raccoon got into them and my cat started sitting on them. And I just use great big plastic tubs, and I drill holes in the bottom and put lava rock and then soil and plant all kinds of things in the containers, and they're pretty around the yard. Well, I have found another plant just like me, sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes have done really well for me in Florida. They love the climate. They even love the soil. But I planted them against my seawall last year, and they climbed up over the edge and into the water and started just spreading like crazy into the water. And I thought, that cannot be healthy for the sea life in there, the wildlife. So I cut all those back. And what I was able to get out were beautiful, nice, big sweet potatoes, and they were delicious. But there were so many roots from the cypress trees around that I couldn't get to all of them. So I got some of the great big containers and put bulbs down in, and they started growing. And they are so beautiful. And now they're taking off. They are running from home, which is a tendency I do. There's those of us that freeze. There's those of us that fight. There's those of us that flee. I'm a fleer. Every 5 years, I kind of run to the next project or run to the next. I've not fled from my marriage, but I tend to flee from other things. So I've noticed they're a lot like me. They don't want to stay in place. They don't want to be confined. They don't want to be told where to grow or where to bloom. So they are heading for the water. But it's a long distance from where they are in their pots. So I'm keeping them nice and clipped, and they've just taken over this patch. Well, another great thing I have found out about sweet potatoes, sweet potato plants, they don't like banana trees. Now, I have had this crop of banana trees since we moved in 1990 in this house on the water in Inverness. And it was fabulously fun to have banana trees in the beginning because I actually had bananas and they're beautiful. They have these great big purple pods and these little blossoms that come over the pods. And as they grow and mature, those pods begin to drop these huge petals off of them. They're very messy on the deck, but they're beautiful. And then each of those petals bear a banana fruit. And so you have these little clumps of bananas. And they're little. The variety that we had was only about that big. They were delightfully sweet. The flesh was really white. And I could tell when they were ripe enough to eat because the squirrels would hang out over the water and they would start peeling them and eating them. I wished I would have had a phone like I have now to take pictures of those squirrels hanging upside down over the water, eating bananas upside down. It was hysterical. But they take over everything. And we've cut them all the way to the ground every single year, and they come right back up. With fury, they come up more. I've had them dug up, they come back. I don't want to put any pesticides or anything that would hurt any wildlife being that close to the water or that close to me and my grandbabies. So we've tried everything from ice cream salt to covering it with sand. We've tried everything. Nothing has gotten rid of these things. I'm down to only about 2 or 3, but they take over. They take over the view. They take over that corner. Well, they don't like sweet potato plants. I've noticed that the sweet potato plants are growing up over the growing banana trees and they're falling over. They're like not allowed to come up. It's kind of comical. Would sweet potatoes take over the world? And I'm thinking, would personality types like myself take over the world? We could, because we have the know-how and the intelligence, but we won't because we don't have the desire to be that involved with that kind of work. Sweet potatoes. This week, I am not only an octopus, I'm a sweet potato. I hope you're discovering wonderful things about yourself out in the world around you. God gives us treasures in our own backyard that we are able to see and experience every single day. Life is a blessing. I hope you join us this Sunday during our conversation time after service, Sacred Conversations. We had the most wonderful discussion last week about all sorts of things unity, and especially we have some newcomers coming, and they've just recently found unity, and they're sharing with us their reasons for leaving, their past church experience, what they were looking for, what they were seeking, what they're hungry for, what broke their heart, what they need. And it's such great information for us. And we're going to continue these wonderful times of sharing, of heart sharing, of checking in, of building this tight-knit family, which has been such a blessing to me and my family over these past 2 years. Unity of Ocala has helped me keep my sanity through this time of transition in my family. And I love every one of you. I love those of you that are in our virtual ministry as well. If you cannot make it to church on a regular basis, we still connect with you. I still want to hear from every one of you of how you're doing. And I've had a lot of counseling calls recently, the last 18 months, especially with the COVID pandemic and the situation of being isolated. So I've been talking to a lot of folks about what they're going through, and none of us are unscathed through this thing. We are all experiencing different levels of trauma. But because of that, we're going to do an interesting exercise during our conversations discussion after church, where we meet at about 11 o'clock and we meet for an hour. We're going to do a special meditation exercise that I was introduced to during ministry. I almost said medical school. I did not make it to medical school. I am still in undergrad work, but I'm not in medical. Sometimes it feels like that. No, when I was in ministry, we had a wonderful professor come in who's a psychiatrist, Dr. Robert Brummett. He's also a Unity minister. So he's just got these fabulous insights and thoughts and experience and expertise and genius. And he took us through an exercise, a meditation called Psychosynthesis. There's different exercises related to that process, but what psychosynthesis is, let me explain to you how it was developed in the psychological circles. There was a student of Dr. Freud who was focused less on the super id and ego of Freud's basic main work and more on our spiritual aspects, especially as adult. And he did, his life work evolved around the premise, which we now know to be true in those same circles, that as we grow and develop, there are parts of our personality that do not evolve along with other parts of our brain and bodies. And the reason that we have those aspects of our personality are for protection. We all experience in childhood some sort of trauma. It's part of what we've signed up for coming to planet Earth, to boot camp here, to develop our soul and become one with God. Well, he realized that, especially in severe trauma cases in children, children will develop other personalities to protect themselves completely from the pain and trauma of the event going on. But all of us, even if we don't recognize, or even if we weren't severely abused or completely abandoned or completely neglected, those would be the severe aspects that a child would develop, probably obvious alter personalities. But we do tend to get stuck at certain child personalities about the time the trauma occurred. For example, during this process of talking and dialoguing with that part of our personality that has become stunted from whatever trauma, I realized what came out to greet me during that meditation was my 9-year-old self on the day of my father's funeral, a few weeks after he died. Now, I had forgot this event. I didn't forget his death. He was killed in a plane wreck when he was 29. I was 9, and it forever altered our life, as you can imagine. But I'd forgotten that whole year. It was just a blur. It was just gone. I didn't even think about it. But what came out during that exercise was me at 9, very upset. And we were to dialogue with this part of our personality and ask them, why are you here? What have you come to tell me? How may I learn from you? What do you need to say? And apparently, and then I did start remembering as that part of my mind began to reveal to me that day more deeply. I was at my grandmother's house where I was practically raised during the summer times, especially. My grandmother told me I didn't have to go to my father's funeral. He was my best friend. I didn't want to say goodbye to him. She told me I didn't have to go. And so I was playing when my mother came, and she was so angry that Grandma told me that. She said she must go. She put my hair in a ponytail, which I hated. She stuffed my little body into a dress, which I really hated. Stuffed my little fat feet into tight shoes, dressy shoes, which I really hated, and stuffed me into a car, and off I went. I don't remember the funeral. I don't remember that day. I don't remember that year, but it started coming back to me. So as I began to dialogue with her, my pad and paper, she began to tell me, people put you in situations you didn't want to be in, but you had no choice. You have a choice now, and you're still letting people put you in situations you don't want to be in. That was a lot for me to digest during year 2 of ministerial school, but it has served me well to go back and visit with those parts of my personality that got stuck at the time of trauma in my childhood. And boy, do they have a lot to reveal. So if you would like to be part of that great experience, that little process into our past to see if there is some additional healing of our spirit, if you feel stuck, if you feel frustrated, if you've experienced trauma, if you're going back to old habits, if there's something triggering, something that hasn't been resolved, join us at our discussion. And remember, all month we are building an altar for the Los Muertes, the Day of the Dead, or the honoring of All Saints Day, which happens in Latino communities on November 1st. On our center altar, we are bringing pictures, mementos, or things to honor those friends and family who have walked on to their next experience. I brought some things regarding my husband. This week, I'm going to bring a picture of my mother and my father. The day my father proposed to my mother, they were kissing. One of their best friends was a professional photographer, and he went everywhere with them, and they got some of the greatest pictures. And this is my favorite, and it sits right at my entryway when you come into my home as just a reminder that love dwells in this house. So I hope you find something particularly special. We will put candles and fruit, seashells, perhaps anything that comes to mind. We had a congregant bring up pictures. Shirley brought up pictures that reminded her of her mother and of her sister. So thank you, Shirley. And there's my little book. I am just going to drop the needle and read whatever page God gives me. Oh, it's called Maniacs for Love. Oh, this is really good for today. Maniacs for Love in our Susceptible to Light book, which is a fun read. When you feel insane with love for another, try and point it at God. He likes that crazy stuff. And he's the wildest of them all. Full on, too much, completely over the top. I believe that. He's such a romancer. He made springs for you, each flower a dedication. He's rather obsessed, really. He made birds just to sing to you. Every species of love songs. Oh, I gotta take that in for just a minute because a bird just flew by my window. Okay, he made birds just for us to sing. Every species of love songs. Wow. He composes new galaxies at the hope you might be even vaguely interested and pay him a glance. Each season is more alluring than the next. Please notice me. He keeps shouting through his poetic verses sewn into each creation. I'm a poetic verse of God sewn into his temple. Oh, I love that. Your heart is actually an endless book of love poems from him, if only you'll open it. What is meant by us being created in God's image is that we're both total maniacs for love. Remember how beloved you are. A special shout out to our Florida friends that have relocated to Grand Junction, Colorado. Clifton, actually, I know right where that is. Don and Marianne Hubble, we love you. We miss you. Keep in touch. I hope you're watching. I know you finally got there. I know the movers are on their way. I love you. God loves you. We will see you Sunday. Bye-bye.